just I had nothing but love for Ben. And then I did my tour in the fall where I had Tucker Carlson one night and Ben the next night. And I gave Ben the nicest intro a person could possibly give him. I mean, it was a conscious effort to build him up because people were already turning on Ben because the war had gone on so long in Gaza.
Megyn Kelly appeared on the Sean Ryan podcast and shared something that most people covering this story have not fully assembled into a coherent picture. She provided significant new context about what was happening behind the scenes between Candace Owens and Erika Kirk, added a layer to the public timeline that genuinely changes how many observers understand the sequence of events, and revealed that she had been engaged in private conversations with both women for weeks before any of it became visible to the public. According to Megyn's own account, confirmed by her December 16th show episode and a MegynKelly.com article published the same day, Erika Kirk allegedly contacted her and asked whether she could speak with Candace in hopes of getting her to slow or stop the investigation and reduce the escalating tension between them.
You and I differ on our angle with regard to, for example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But because like I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business?
If that account is accurate, and Megyn presented it as her own direct personal experience, it represents a genuinely major detail in the overall story. Because it means Erika Kirk, who has publicly maintained that she finds Candace Owens' claims delusional and defamatory, was simultaneously reaching out through private back channels attempting to get Candace to stop. Those two things, public dismissal and private outreach, do not point in the same direction. They describe two completely different relationships to the same problem. And the community following this story has been working through that specific contradiction ever since Megyn put it on the documented record.
There was a lot of blowback. Ben is, ardently 100% pro-Israel. And I didn't like seeing him twist in the wind. I felt bad for him. And I really wanted to sort of vouch for him with my audience and say, this is a good person, Let me tell you some wonderful things about Ben in the intro before he came out. But publicly, we aired that on my show. And he was in an irascible mood that night. We had a contentious back and forth on the stage, but it was fine. I had no problem with it. And he kind of stormed out of there that night. And I thought, are we not good? And why are we not good?
This is the complete story of Megyn Kelly's behind-the-scenes role in these events, her very public clash with Ben Shapiro, why she believes the Tucker Carlson question was always the genuine center underneath the Erika Kirk controversy, and what her appearance on the Hodge Twins podcast reveals about where her thinking has landed after months of watching all of this unfold at close range. Start with the confirmed documented timeline, because the sequence matters enormously for understanding how Megyn ended up positioned at the center of this dispute.
I think in that night I thought it could be because of Tucker, because I'm still friends with Tucker, and those two were openly warring. And I was trying to get them not to. I love Tucker like a brother, and I've known him a lot longer than Ben, but I care about Ben too. And I tried very much behind the scenes to get them both to come together and try, for the sake of the conservative movement and the country, to disagree, but not hate each other.
The conflict between Candace Owens and Erika Kirk became publicly visible in October and November 2025 as Owens launched her Bride of Charlie investigative series on YouTube, raising questions about the succession audio, the speed of the organizational leadership transition, and the behavior of people inside Turning Point USA during the period surrounding Charlie's assassination. Owens was simultaneously posting about the documented donor pressure Charlie had faced from pro-Israel networks, a topic she and Charlie had discussed extensively before his death.
You comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erika of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
Megyn Kelly was, at that moment, in a genuinely complicated position with respect to all of it. She had been professionally close to Charlie. They had appeared together on her podcast on August 6, 2025, just over 1 month before he was killed, discussing the pressure both of them had experienced from pro-Israel donors and commentators who were demanding unconditional political support. She appeared on stage with Erika at the Glendale tour stop in November 2025 and cried publicly while describing Charlie as someone who seemed closer to God than the rest of us.
It's only one side asking me to defriend the other side. And But Ben and I had a text exchange after that. And he said in the text, something to the effect of, I agree that our friendship is more important than what other friendships we have in our lives.
She had called Owens brilliant in September 2025 when discussing Owens' commentary on Charlie's evolving documented views on Israel. She was simultaneously connected to both women and had been publicly defending both of them in different contexts and for different reasons. The conflict between Candace and Erika put her directly in the middle of something she had personal relationships on both sides of. Then came Ben Shapiro, confirmed by Megyn's own account on her December 16th show episode. Her exact words published on MegynKelly.com.
Which was a fool's errand, but it was undertaken in earnest, for whatever it's worth. And instead, it seemed to turn Ben on me, not Tucker. He had no problem. He wasn't into it. Like, he wasn't wanting to be close to Ben, but in no way did it make him feel angry toward me.
I had an exchange with Ben Shapiro during the Megyn Kelly live tour in which he said Candace had accused Erika of orchestrating Charlie's attacker. I was taken aback because I had not heard that. In the interim between that night and the next, I had my staff go research exactly what Candace had said. I had been planning on saying something during the following show because if it was not true, I did not want to have something that heavy hanging out there. But someone in the audience actually asked me about it during the Q&A the very next night, and I said, that's actually not true.
The next thing I knew, Sean, he was standing on the stage at Turning Point, ripping me as a coward.
A coward?
Allegedly because I wouldn't call out Candace Owens and what she was saying about Erika Kirk. But that's not what it was about. It was about my not ending my friendship with Tucker, which is the thing that he had been pushing me on for weeks.
At that time, it was not true. Candace had not accused Erika of orchestrating Charlie's attacker. I have gotten a lot of grief for saying that, but I was correct. We are relentlessly factual here in this program. Candace had impugned Turning Point USA, and I realize Erika is CEO, but she was not until after Charlie died. That statement, that's actually not true, was what triggered the most significant and most public phase of Megyn's conflict with Shapiro.
And that's what we should nurture and, prioritize. Because he'd been in my ear about Tucker prior to that, and I was like, I totally get where you're coming from, but I love him and I disagree with you. And I do listen to his show, and I think you're misinterpreting where he's coming from. And he rejected that out of hand, and we had already agreed to disagree on Tucker, which is fine, right? That's friends do that. Like, I get it. He's in a very sensitive place. He's got family in Israel and I think a home in Israel and, obviously very, very committed to it. And
she disputed his characterization of what Candace had actually said, and Shapiro did not respond to that disagreement quietly or generously. What followed was one of the highest-profile intra-conservative media confrontations in the entire post-assassination period. Megyn's documented account of the Shapiro conflict, shared across her December show and her AM Fest appearance, and confirmed by the Charlie Kirk Show podcast on December 22nd, was specific and pointed in its characterization of what happened. According to her, Shapiro first sent her a private message, communicating that her friendship was too important to him, and then, shortly afterward, criticized her publicly during a paid speaking appearance.
Is a moral and logical absurdity. There is only one moral side here, Erika Kirk's side. The side of the widow with 2 children, whose husband was shot live on camera in front of all of us. Friendship with the person accusing TPUSA of a cover-up of Charlie's murder is no excuse for cowardice.
She described that sequence, private warmth immediately followed by public attack, as deliberate and calculated rather than a genuine disagreement that had simply escalated organically through normal tension. From Megyn's documented perspective, the Erika Kirk question was never really the actual center of the conflict. The genuine center was Tucker Carlson. Her argument was that the pressure she was receiving to condemn Candace was in practice pressure to distance herself from Tucker, whose public criticism of Israeli government policy and whose documented relationship with Charlie during his final months were the underlying issues actually driving the entire public confrontation.
The same holds true of Megyn Kelly, a person I consider a friend, characterizing Candace as a young mother and thus shying away from condemning her actions or fibbing about them. That is a non-starter. Meghan Markle is a young mother. Ilhan Omar is a young mother. That doesn't matter. And when Megyn said this week, quote, "My goal and my job here is to try to understand, yes, where Candace is coming from on this," and says she sees no purpose in inserting herself, quote, into this on one side.
Megyn described the situation as a sustained, organized effort to get her to publicly break from Tucker, and she refused. That refusal, rather than any specific position she held about Erika or Candace individually, is what she believes drove the escalation with Shapiro to the level it reached. Candace Owens' response to Shapiro's public criticism became one of the most viral and most quoted lines in the entire saga. Her documented reply, "F you, Ben, and the midget horse you rode in on," and spread across every major platform and became one of the defining cultural moments in the conservative media civil war that erupted following Charlie Kirk's assassination. It struck many observers as genuinely funny. It struck others as illustrative of exactly how completely the pretense of conservative unity had collapsed since September 2025. Either way, it captured something real about the depth of the rupture, the kind of language that only emerges when years of accumulated professional restraint have been comprehensively burned through.
He, like many of his supporters, have been using the Candace-Erika feud against me ever since. At the time, I wasn't saying anything about whatever is going on between the two of them because I was working behind the scenes to help them resolve it. I actually had gotten to know Candace a little, and I knew Erika pretty well. And Candace was very, very focused on Turning Point, as she remains, including Erika. And Erika asked me if I would help her broker a peace between the two of them. And I said yes.
Megyn publicly backed Candace's right to continue her investigation and ask her questions without being publicly condemned as evil or dangerous, while carefully maintaining that she herself was not personally endorsing specific unverified conclusions Candace had drawn in her series. She framed her position explicitly as defending open inquiry, the right and even the obligation to ask uncomfortable questions about documented events, rather than endorsing any particular answer those questions might eventually produce. Critics from the pro-Israel wing of conservative media argued that sustaining that position in practice amounted to enabling harmful and irresponsible theories about Charlie's assassination and its context. Megyn's documented public response on X was unambiguous. "No, I have no obligation to separate myself from anyone."
I don't agree with what she's said about Turning Point, Erika, and she knows that. But my point was simply that I thought maybe Charlie helped me understand, to keep my powder dry in the whole thing, so that maybe I could be in a position to help it happen. It's what Erika wants. Maybe Candace does want an off-ramp, and I'm willing to try. So Candace and I were in touch, and she was very nice. She said, I'm thrilled it's you. I'll do it. So they were going to do it out here in Arizona, and then there was a security issue. Candace said that she couldn't come. And then Erika said, I'll go to you. I'll go to Nashville.
I run my own media company and my own show. That show is where I express my own opinions, and I will decide what not to opine on. If you need me to condemn Candace or Tucker for their opinions in order to listen to me, then I may not be for you. That statement, combined with her December 16th revelation about the specific nature of her behind-the-scenes role, made Megyn Kelly one of the most central and most carefully analyzed figures in the entire post-assassination conservative media landscape. Now examine what Megyn has actually documented about her specific behind-the-scenes role in the Candace-Erika situation, because this is the element that most coverage has treated as a footnote when it deserves to function as a headline.
So I was trying to do that at Erika's request, and people like Ben didn't quite understand, nor did they give a shit. You know, it's like they just assumed I was a coward, I guess. I was too weak to stand up. Meanwhile, it's like I've been asked by the person you purport to be protecting, Erika Kirk, to help her behind the scenes put this to rest. So go and you're trying to shame me for not coming out and saying, Candace Owens is bad. You know, it's just possible you don't know the whole story.
Confirmed by the MegynKelly.com December 16th article and the Apple Podcasts episode published the same date, Megyn revealed that she had been in private communication with both Erika Kirk and Candace Owens for weeks before anything became visible to the public. She had been, in her own words, working behind the scenes to manage and potentially reduce the tension. The Hollywood Reporter's March 5th, 2026 investigation into the Candace-Erika conflict confirmed independently. In December 2025, former Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly, who has since built her own conservative-leaning podcast audience and is friendly with both women, brokered a private, in-person meeting in Nashville that lasted 4.5 hours. She brokered it.
Will it last? Where does it go from here? I was joking earlier, like, what's more tenuous, the Gaza peace deal or this situation? What I really want is for Candace to move on from Turning Point and Erika. I have no problem with her asking questions, but not about them. But I also object, for the record, to the people who have tried to shut Candace down entirely on inquiring into what, if any, role did Israel have here.
That is the documented word choice from The Hollywood Reporter. Not facilitated, not encouraged, not suggested. Brokered. She was the identified intermediary who made the December 15th 4.5-hour meeting between Erika and Candace Owens actually happen in a physical room together. Megyn described the Nashville meeting in publicly positive terms, framing Erika's decision to fly there as a constructive choice to address the conflicts directly and face-to-face rather than through public statements, social media posts, or another escalating digital confrontation. Critics of that specific framing, primarily people who had been closely following Candace's investigation and the documented organizational developments at Turning Point USA, saw the timing and the context very differently. They noted that in the period when Erika was reportedly reaching out through Megyn, Candace had been publicly examining details that those critics described as particularly sensitive to Turning Point USA's new leadership.
It's just extraordinary. I mean, Erika's been all over the country trying to honor Charlie's commitments on his book tour. She was exhausted. She had this coming up this week. I mean, she's going through, she has 2 babies at home she's now a single mother to. But she really wanted to put this to bed, and so she said, I'll go to you. And then it morphed into, let's not do the live stream. Let's just do it, the 2 of us, which I thought was great. So they both went in there. Erika brought a trusted friend and employee here, and Candace.
From their perspective, the Nashville trip was as much a responsive move driven by investigative pressure as it was a spontaneous or independently motivated peace gesture. The framing matters because it changes the interpretation of what Erika was actually trying to accomplish by making the trip. The aftermath of the Nashville meeting produced immediate and sharp conflict about what had actually been discussed, agreed, or understood between the 2 women.
Him up on the wall, and that he'd had it with them, and that they were making demands of him that he was not prepared to meet, and he was at his wit's end. And he had told me personally that he found their behavior, and I quote, repulsive. So I was fine. I don't think it had anything to do with it, but why did I have an obligation to stop Candace from asking those questions? I didn't, and I didn't call her out because I favored her asking.
Both Erika and Candace posted positively about the meeting on X the same evening it concluded. Both used the word productive in their characterizations. But Candace opened her very next podcast episode with 4.5 hours later, I'm alive. I'm alive. And within a relatively short period, the conflict fully resumed its public trajectory. Candace aired the leaked Zoom call audio that became one of the most discussed pieces of evidence in her series. Erika appeared on The Charlie Kirk Show to respond to it. Whatever peace had been achieved in Nashville, to whatever extent one had genuinely been achieved, did not hold in practice or in public. Critics who had been closely tracking organizational developments pointed to a subsequent hire at Turning Point USA as evidence that the spirit of any ceasefire, if one had genuinely been agreed upon during the Nashville meeting, was not being honored from the organization's side. Whether that hire violated any actual understanding or whether any understanding of that nature was ever reached has never been publicly confirmed by either woman.
And I want to make clear, I don't think Israel had any role. I think Tyler Robinson killed Charlie. My only question is whether there was some trans-Tifa element that helped him. However, it's okay to ask questions about Israel. And it was Andrew Colvett, the executive producer of The Charlie Kirk Show, who sent those texts to the FBI of Charlie's, from that private message. It wasn't a text, it was private messages, like a group chat, in which he said the donors to Turning Point were.
The Nashville meeting produced no lasting visible change in the trajectory of the public conflict, and that outcome has itself become part of what people analyze when assessing the significance and the intent of the meeting. The interview Erika gave on The Megyn Kelly Show on November 22nd, 2025, just before the most intense and most publicly damaging phase of the conflict, drew its own specific scrutiny from people watching closely. The November appearance was among Erika's first major long-form interviews following her appointment to the CEO role. Megyn and Erika appeared together before a sold-out crowd at Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona, for what MegynKelly.com described as an emotional and wide-ranging conversation covering Erika's background, her marriage to Charlie, her commitment to continuing his mission, the role of prayer in her life, and more.
You will say the thing about Candace Owens, or you're bad. You're bad and Tucker's bad. And it got lumped, and this whole thing became a proxy for the fight over, because they needed me to condemn Candace Owens, not because of what she said about Erika Kirk. To this day, it's not about that. It's because she is the chief critic.
Viewers who had been following Candace's investigation and who were aware that Megyn had been in private communication with both women for weeks pointed out that Megyn did not press Erika on the specific documented questions Candace had been raising publicly. The interview's publicly released highlights focused on faith, family, Charlie's memory, and the stated future direction of Turning Point USA. The authenticated donor pressure text messages, the succession video disputes, the Aspen meeting documentation, the call log questions, none of those specific topics appeared to be directly and specifically addressed in what was made available publicly.
Have some humility. And a real friend, before he stood up in front of millions to attack me as a coward, might have shot me a text to say, hey, I'm about to attack you for not doing this thing. I know you to be a good person. Is there a reason you're not doing this thing I demand of you? And I would have told him. But from that night forward, he and his supporters turned this into
Some viewers concluded that the private conversations Megyn had been having simultaneously with both women had shaped the scope and the parameters of the Glendale interview in ways that limited what questions would be asked. Others argued that a sold-out live tour venue filled with deeply emotional supporters was clearly not the appropriate context for a detailed prosecutorial examination of a recently bereaved widow on sensitive and contested organizational matters. Both interpretations traveled widely, and neither has been definitively settled. What is documented is that Megyn Kelly was, by her own stated account, in private communication with Erika for weeks before that interview. She was aware of what Candace was investigating. She subsequently brokered the December Nashville meeting.
much better. And I'm still close with Erika. It is possible. I see what's happening between the two of them. I've said what I'm going to say about it. And I have asked Candace to stop, and I've said I don't approve of what Candace is saying about Erika, but it's never enough. You give them one little, no, you have to say it like this. It has to be this far. You have to go this far about it. You've got to condemn it in these terms. Fuck you. No, I don't.
And her November tour interview with Erika, which preceded the most intense public phase of the entire conflict, did not engage directly with the specific questions and documented evidence Candace had been building her series around. Whether those facts connect meaningfully or simply reflect the natural differences between different relationships operating in different contexts is a judgment call the community following this story has never reached agreement on. Megyn's appearance on the Hodge Twins podcast produced the statement that generated the most significant and most recent wave of public discussion. She said there are still things she does not know, and specifically that while she accepts Tyler Robinson as the person who carried out the act that killed Charlie Kirk, she is no longer completely ruling out the possibility that other people or outside influences may have played a role in what happened. That public shift, from fully accepting the official account to introducing documented uncertainty about whether Robinson acted entirely without external coordination or support, was significant, coming from a figure carrying Megyn's platform size and her established credibility in the conservative media ecosystem. Supporters of Megyn's position argue that this reflects precisely what she says. It reflects genuine intellectual honesty about an ongoing investigation that contains documented evidentiary questions that have not been publicly resolved.
Arguably one of them in the country, arguably one of the chief in the country. And they need me to say she's bad, she's an anti. And now that they've made anything I say the stakes of the relationship, between me and these people, it's a forever no. It's beyond a no. It's a forever no. You want to get on my bad side? Try to control me. It's just never going to happen. So I won't defriend Tucker.
The ATF's inconclusive ballistics finding, the multiple DNA contributors identified on key physical evidence, Joe Kent's public statement that his National Counterterrorism Center was directed to stop following specific foreign intelligence leads before the investigation was formally complete, the 5-day timeline in which the crime scene location was excavated and repaved. These are documented facts sitting unresolved alongside the prosecution's assembled evidence against Robinson. Megyn saying publicly that she is not completely ruling out other involvement is, from this analytical perspective, simply an honest acknowledgement that the complete picture has not been established to a standard she personally finds satisfying. Critics argue the position differently. The Jerusalem Post and Jewish News Syndicate both published detailed critiques, arguing that Megyn was providing audience and legitimacy to theories that lack any serious evidentiary foundation, that she was allowing her documented personal affection for Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens to shape her public positions on a matter requiring more responsible and more careful handling, and that her refusal to draw clearly defined boundaries around what constitutes legitimate inquiry versus harmful and irresponsible speculation was itself irresponsible, given the specific reach of her platform. Megyn's documented public response to those critics has been entirely consistent across every setting in which the pressure has been applied. She determines what she opines on. Nobody else makes that determination for her or on her behalf. She will not be pressured into specific public condemnations by people who frame those condemnations as professional or personal moral obligations she owes the broader community. What makes Megyn Kelly's specific position in this story uniquely significant? Compared to every other media figure who has engaged publicly with these questions is the particular combination of factors she carries to it. She was personally close to Charlie Kirk in a documented and sustained professional relationship. She was physically present for the August 6th podcast in which Charlie spoke openly on camera about donor preference.
So I feel for Erika because I don't think Charlie was having an easy time of that. And Erika certainly is not going to be having an easy time with that. You know, like she's left with Charlie's messaging, which was no war with Iran, but that anti-Islam is brain rot. And probably in no condition to discern what exactly is anti-Islam and what's not. Because
she personally brokered the meeting between the two women most central to the post-assassination public conflict. She was in private, simultaneous communication with both Erika Kirk and Candace Owens across the same weeks. And she has been publicly willing to say, "I don't know," about questions that everyone else in the media landscape has either answered with confident certainty or refused to engage with at all. That specific combination, intimate first-person knowledge of the situation, documented personal relationships with all the central figures, and a consistent public refusal to reach conclusions she has not personally verified through evidence she finds satisfactory, makes Megyn Kelly the most consequential and most carefully analyzed figure in this entire story, who cannot easily be placed in either camp. Whether she actually is genuinely neutral in any meaningful sense, or whether her consistent public defense of Owens and Tucker, her behind-the-scenes role with Erika, and her specific handling of the Glendale interview collectively reflect a position she has simply chosen not to state explicitly, is the meta-level debate that runs underneath everything else being discussed. One commenter captured the most critical version of the opposition view precisely. No one does themselves any favors by humoring this kind of insanity and stupidity. Candace Owens is either insane or evil. Neither viewpoint should be defended or celebrated. That represents one end of the documented reaction spectrum. The other end consists of people who genuinely believe Megyn is the only figure in this entire story with sufficient access to all the central parties, sufficient documented knowledge of Charlie's actual final months, and sufficient willingness to publicly tolerate uncertainty to be worth listening to seriously on what happened and why. There is one scenario that essentially everyone following this story has at some point identified as extraordinary. If Megyn Kelly ever hosted Candace Owens and Erika Kirk together in the same room for a direct, extended, carefully moderated conversation, in which both women were required to respond to each other's specific documented claims and questions in real time. That conversation, which has never happened publicly, would, as many observers have noted across many platforms, likely represent one of the most viewed pieces of content in the documented history of conservative media. It would force a level of specificity and sustained directness that neither woman has been required to maintain when speaking separately to interviewers who are friendly or at minimum non-adversarial. Erika's framing of events would have to hold up against Candace's specific documented questions. Candace's specific claims would have to hold up against Erika's direct responses. Neither would be able to redirect, reframe, or simply not address the hardest questions because a moderator and the other woman in the room would keep returning to them. Whether that conversation ever happens and whether Megyn Kelly would be both willing and positioned to host it remains genuinely open. What is not open is that Megyn Kelly is the only person in this entire story who has documented personal relationships with both women, personally brokered their one previous private meeting, been in extended simultaneous private communication with both of them, and publicly maintained a posture of asking questions rather than declaring premature conclusions. Whatever her actual private views are about Erika Kirk and Candace Owens respectively, she has positioned herself as the single most important and most strategically consequential media figure in this ongoing story. The one person neither side can comfortably dismiss and neither side can fully claim. And every time she appears on a podcast, whether to 15 million listeners on her own platform or to the Hodge twins audience or at a live tour stop, and says something like, "I don't know," about a question that the entire conservative media ecosystem has been demanding she answer definitively, the conversation starts over at a higher level and with a wider audience than it had before. Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly were both, in the final documented months of his life, working through a shared process of rethinking certain long-held political and institutional assumptions neither of them had publicly questioned before. He never got to see where that process led for him. She is still living through it publicly in real time, carrying private conversations she had with him that nobody else was present for, that nobody outside her can verify or contradict, and that inform everything she says publicly about a story that refuses to reach a settled conclusion. That specific position, knowing things that cannot be confirmed by anyone else, being willing to say "I don't know" about conclusions that everyone around her is demanding she reach, and having the documented platform to make those two words matter every time she says them publicly, is what makes her "I don't know" the two most consequential words anyone has spoken about this entire story. What is your read on it? Was Megyn Kelly acting as a genuine neutral mediator in this conflict, or does her consistent public defense of Owens and Tucker and her specific handling of her relationships with all the central figures reflect a clear position she has simply chosen not to state out loud? And if she ever actually hosted both women together for a direct public conversation, would that conversation change anything about what people understand or believe about what happened?